Hey everyone, ErikOnPaper here, and I'm Eric. And so what we're going to do is finish up that Batman piece that I already posted of me inking with a quill pen. And for the coloring tutorial here, I'm going to be moving pretty fast because it's Happy Batman Day, and I want to get this video out. So one of the things that I like to do first is flat the image with my darkest colors, and then using the brush tool or the gradient tool in Photoshop on a screen mode, I paint over that. That way I already have, for the most part, my darkest colors set out, but I don't have to worry about adding shadows because they're already there. It's a real time saver. With the exception here that for the clouds, I wasn't as happy with the texturing there, so I went in and put my brush on multiply, and that gave it a darker result, as you can see. Now what I'm doing here with Batman is I select a flat and then put that on a completely new layer, and using an alpha mask, paint just on that layer. And here I just left in some of the experimenting that I did while editing, and I found that I wanted the cape to have a really like a sheen to it, and the gradient tool was just a little too gradual because I wanted to get the folds of the cape in there, and typically when I use the feathering, I set it to around 15 or so. That's just the look that I use. Some artists do great work with much sharper masks, but I kind of like the a little bit of the more cinematic, uh, pseudo-realistic look. I'm pretty sure that's not the art term, but I know what I like. The way I was taught to work was to go from background to foreground first, meaning you render out the background or get a really good start on it, and then you move further and further into the foreground. And since in this piece we only have cloudy sky and Batman, uh, it was pretty easy to do that. Not a lot of buildings or any other environment in the way or any other characters. And the main reason I work this way is to try to set the character into the scene as much as possible and make it believable. Now, some things graphically I like to do to set characters apart and put, even if there's only one character, you can get different image planes there. And that's why I have Batman's cape over his arm and leg, for example, and why I chose to draw in some clouds as opposed to drawing some clouds in only in the computer. And wanting to get a little more of a highlight on here. Now, tactically, I know Batman wouldn't have a lot of sheen or shiny elements to it, but this is the look I'm going for, and this is more of the classic comic look. And I think one of the reasons why Batman has endured so long is that Bill Finger gave a really good design for him. It's simple but effective, and yeah, looking at the video, I can see where I played around with some things and then thought, oh, that's a little too shiny here. So just like with the clouds, I went in with a multiply. And I would also like to point out that I'm using pretty much the same purple color the entire time for the rendering. It's just a matter of determining where your light source is coming from. Like I'm imagining the light coming in from the left, or the right, like right of the drawing, left if you were Batman. So obviously I have the highlights more concentrated toward the light. And one of the other things I'm doing too is when I paint in screen mode, as opposed to just using normal, it's going to, if you turn the image to black and white, it's going to have a much more dynamic colorscape that when this piece is eventually printed, uh, it has a greater range and will look more pleasing to the eye than just colors all in the same hue. Now, Batman's emblem I made really shiny, same with his belt, because those are different textures than the rest of his material. I don't know what the initial coloring, or I should say the initial material would be for Batman's clothing in the comics, because it looks like it gets torn quite regularly. You know, in the movies he has armor plating and things like that, or I know a lot of the suits are latex, but see when I go into black and white how the image pops up where you can see definite highlights. Now here on a new layer, I just wanted to see what would work for an additional light, because I didn't want the image to look too monochromatic. And here I was trying with a yellow, which kind of works, but you just pop into hue saturation, and I decided I liked a cooler blue look as more of an accent. It keeps everything within the same color spectrum, and it doesn't depart too much from the established tone of the piece, which is a much cooler looking piece, cooler in terms of color. But at the same time, it does help break it up and define the character and define the shapes a bit more. And going in here with a much lighter opacity, uh, getting some blue highlights in there, but overall just trying to fill in the piece and sometimes go back too far. That's a luxury of working with digital, is you can scale it back, but I often try to incorporate everything I do into the art, even mistakes, and then getting more sheen on his emblem, because that's where he wants the bad guys to shoot, in his most protected area. And yeah, just using the accent color, and pretty soon toward the end, I was realizing that something that was making the piece still look a little flat for my taste, even though I think it's starting to look cool, was the background was a little too monochromatic. But here I'm just giving his eyes some life by putting on a black solid visual effects layer, changing that to screen mode, and then painting on top of that, just to give his eyes a kind of glow. It draws your attention to the eyes, which are, you know, the window to the soul as the expression goes. And now going back to the background, see, I didn't complete it 100%, just adding in some blues to the clouds so that it makes sense. And now painting over the line art, using a pseudo color hold just to make Batman pop even more, removing the black lines from that image, or just giving it kind of a mist. And yeah, some experiments with blues and trying the gradient tool. Overall, was not too happy with it. It looked too much of an afterthought. So just went in with another blue color, and then decided that I wanted a gradient uh, in the background, almost like maybe it's sunset and Batman's emerging. And overall, I think the little bit of that hue helped make everything pop and make this image stand out a bit more, adding in those blues. And yeah, overall, I was pretty happy with this piece. I'm going to be drawing Batman again soon, probably in a few months, because it's always good to compare your work to itself to see progress. Anyway, hope you have a happy Batman Day. Thanks for watching. Please like and subscribe, and I hope you keep telling your stories.